COP26. Many of you may remember this, of course, the Grand Conference, one of the first, of course, post-Brexit conferences that was meant to put the UK on a world stage, meant to show that it was still a world player, that it could play with the big boys and it could still demand some sort of respect. Hasn't really worked out that well since then, has it? And of course, you may remember just, well, a couple of months ago, you may remember Rishi Sunak's grand green U-turn, where after the somewhat surprise and narrowly held onto seat of Uxbridge by about 400 votes, the entire Conservative Party, or at least Rishi Sunak, shall we say, decided that the way that he needed to win was to become the Changebringer. And, well, that's failed as well, but we've got other videos about that. But he was going to be the Changebringer by being the one to make the hard questions, the hard calls. And it was decided that all this net zero stuff, all these green pledges, these net zero green pledges that the UK had been very ambitious on and could do with no problem. It just had to, put the backing into those ambitious pledges, and it could very much do them if it wanted to. But of course, we had a government who is full of net zero skeptics, who they weren't questioning climate change, they were just being skeptical on net zero. And was this really the right way to go? Don't we just need to, delay the you get the idea by now. But the big one, of course, was when Rishi Sunak made that announcement. At the exact same time, there was a UN summit going on in America, where, of course, we had, Prince William, the guy who's next in line to the throne, announcing his big green initiative, the global, the GeoShot Award, I think it was, for people who'd come up with like really good green initiatives, and they were going to be rewarded for coming up with this by winning this really prestigious prize. And as well, at that same time, it was a green conference. And of course, a lot of people were noticing, well, hold on, why isn't Rishi Sunak here? We've got all these other, world leaders, or at least representatives. Where's the UK? And at exactly the same time, Rishi Sunak made that announcement. And as we covered in that that time when that happened, oh, look, you've got ambassadors from the UN running up to the UK diplomats going, what's going on? What's going on, guys? Fill us in. Why is Sunak making these announcements? And now we've got the UN in the lead up to the next COP summit, COP28. They are now seeking assurances that the UK is going to be firm and committed to following its pledges, which, as we've said before, it's not good if the UK on an international stage makes these pledges and then decides, we're not going to follow them. And I keep on saying it because we've recently had a lot of examples of, quote, global Britain meant to be, sailing the world, being this buccaneering, independent trading nation, and playing with the big boys, using its influence on a world stage. Well, if anything, it has just gone to show just what global Britain really has become. Instead of this mighty, four-mast, six-gun deck, battleship that global Britain was meant to be, patrolling the world, playing with the big boys, showing its influence. Instead, what's turning up is a rowboat with 2 or 3 people with just this tiny flag on saying, hey guys, global Britain's here. Listen to us because it's not very good. It's not very good at all. And remember, the UN Secretary General has specifically gone to Rishi Sunak and, more importantly, sent UN ambassadors to the UK to remind Rishi of Britain's pledges that it has made on net zero and to try and get assurances that Rishi Sunak is going to meet those pledges. Now, remember, all of this was done, and Sunak's announcement of these reversal of the net zero pledges was done to try and appease a certain right-wing net zero scrutiny group of the party, saying, we're just asking questions about net zero. In reality, they don't want to come out and be, climate skeptical, but hey, there you go. But the other thing we also covered was the fact you had a conservative on Conservative Home ringing the alarm bells, as we've seen a couple of times, saying, hey, if you engage in net zero skepticism, it's not a vote winner. It doesn't win you any votes. In fact, it makes you look really bad on a lot of areas. So you've got that on one end of these people who are determined not to see these net zero pledges or any of these ambitious targets or policies fulfilled because, well, like I say, they are fundamentally on this free market fundamentalist mindset. And if you saw the Conservative conference recently, the Alliance for Responsible Citizenship, they had this entire video where the great, shall we say, conservative thinkers sat down around a table and questioned the need for green technologies. And their big point was always, oh, we can't go to these green technologies because of the economy. Because somehow, if we go to these green technologies, it will damage the economy. Not saying how these green technologies would, of course, damage the economy, but, oh, if we went to them, it would damage the economy. And, of course, pointing out that China is like the number one producer of batteries, of these batteries for green technologies in the world. Part of this green revolution is building these battery factories. Did any of those people in that panel recommend maybe the UK should see this as an opportunity to build these factories and put forward subsidies or, stuff to get this industry built in the UK? Not one. They were all concerned that if we move toward this green technology, that essentially China would somehow manipulate the market and stop this. When in reality, all that would happen is very quickly that industry would probably leave China and be set up elsewhere, and other countries would heavily invest in building those technologies. We've seen this, of course, with the superconductor issue. And then I think the group to interestingly watch out of this, there will be, what do these Tories who actually care about Britain's global prestige on a stage, what do they care about how Britain is seen? Because there are a few Tories, Theresa May in particular, is one of those big Tories. We'll see if she says anything about this, whether she can rally any potential support. But this is also, yet again, another opportunity for those green Tories who actually do care, because there are those Tories who actually do care about net zero and following in that and going on this green path, which, okay, excellent. Broken clock is right twice a day. Give them credit, guys, where, credit is due. Where they need to start showing their power, I think. They need to start actually getting together and start putting pressure on Rishi Sunak, start pushing back against the net zero scrutiny group. Because if not, It's going to really damage the UK economy, as we've said before. We are in a race for this. Sunak reversing on these green pledges is bad. The investments that were promised for this green technology ultimately going to be taken up by Labour now, which I've said is the massive big opportunity that you are going to get a Labour Party that is really committed to these net zero pledges and has plans to achieve those pledges, which is even more important, and policy to back it up as well. So again, we're going to end up probably with the Labour Party having to really oversee this transition to our greener future and greener economy. The Conservatives had every chance, and they were given every chance to be able to assess and move in this transition, but they didn't. Why? Ideological reasons. That's the only reason we can pick it out. And like I say, there were those Conservatives, Chris Skidmore, who did get it. Unfortunately, there just weren't enough of them, or it seems there weren't enough of them to actually form some sort of power block to be able to, affect that. And like I say, that is going to be a great detriment to the UK economy, and it is something that the Conservatives should be punished for at the next general election because they've been in power for over 13 years. And if Cameron had committed to offshore and onshore wind, things would be probably significantly different when it comes to green energy production here in the UK. So, as always, thank you very much, of course, as always, for watching. And please do remember to click on the like, share, and subscribe button on your way out. And of course, as always, we'll see you all next time.